Welcome to Forbes Newsroom. Joining me now is Mark Ebner, New York Times bestselling author, journalist, and co-author of Off the Deep End. Mark, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm glad to be here, Brittany.
So, your book is just out, Off the Deep End, where you're a co author, and it is about Jerry and Becki Falwell and the collapse of an evangelical dynasty. So, let's take a step back here. And for those of us who might not be, as familiar with the Falwells, can you describe the prominence of that family before this scandal broke?
Well, it's historically Jerry Falwell and Becki Falwell were the heir apparents to the not only the Liberty University but the ministry that Jerry's father, Jerry Falwell Sr., had created, and we all remember that. There's a lot of things strikingly similar about them in that Falwell Sr. was spearheading the moral majority movement and, essentially got Ronald Reagan elected. Jump ahead so many years, and you see that Jerry Falwell Jr., his son, threw the evangelical vote to Donald Trump. But Jerry Falwell was a lawyer. Junior is a lawyer, and he's a real estate guy, and he had no business, proselytizing as the president of Liberty University, in my opinion.
So they sound like a conservative, like they're big in conservative circles, big in Christian circles. So how does your co-author Giancarlo Granda get involved with them?
Well, Giancarlo Granda had essentially just gotten out of his parents' basement where he was playing video games and studying at Miami-Dade Junior College. He was studying accounting at the time that he met the Falwells, not cuck theory, which is something that plays into all of this. He was working as a pool attendant at the Fontainebleau Hotel, and he felt some eyes in the back of his head. He turned around, and there was this near middle-aged woman in a green bikini who was essentially bird dogging him while he worked, taking photos of him, just watching him in all his tasks, to the point where she patted her daybed and said, "Come here, young man." And she told him that young women didn't know how, and I'm paraphrasing, didn't know half of what she knew. And she invited him up to her hotel suite at the Fontainebleau. His reaction right then and there was like any normal heterosexual 20-year-old young man. He was having his Mrs. Robinson moment, or if you will, his Stifler's mom moment. This is all that he saw. And his attitude was like, "Oh, heck yeah, I'm down for this." And then she paused and said, "Well, there's one thing my husband likes to watch." And that was, yeah, he was like he'd never been even introduced to something as kinky as that before in his life. He hadn't had a proper relationship at that point in his life. And he left the hotel, called his sister. His sister thought it was kind of funny. She said, "Go for it." He went for it. And, the rest is off the deep end. It's all in the book.
Yeah, so that really took a turn, and that began a decade here now of chaos. So, what do you think that the biggest
One third, one third of his life, Brittany. Imagine that.
I can that's
Under the thrall and under the thumb of the Falwells.
yeah, I can't even begin to imagine that's such a long time based on one, moment of, oh, this might be a funny story, and then the entanglement there is wild. So, what do you think the biggest misconception is of Giancarlo?
Well, number one, people are still hashtagging him and calling him pool boy. Now, it's one thing we had fun with in the book is Giancarlo's not even the real pool boy. And spoiler alert, the real pool boy is Michael Cohen in all this. And we've even dedicated a chapter to Michael Cohen called The Real Pool Boy.
So, speaking of Michael Cohen, you did dedicate that whole chapter to him. Can you kind of elaborate what you mean by him being the real pool boy and also explain this connection between Michael Cohen, Giancarlo, Jerry Falwell, and the endorsement of Trump in 2016?
Wow, that's a lot. Well, I with with Michael Cohen, who, as far as I know, is still friendly with the Falwells today. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if Michael Cohen was still on the Falwell dime 3 days before he ended up going to prison, when he had a dinner with the Falwells in New York City. 3 days before he went to prison. So when I called Michael Cohen up about this, he was like, "Oh no, I don't want anything to do with this." Falwell's, yeah, I mean, Michael Cohen's a fixer, a notorious fixer, and he was there to make sure that Jerry Falwell Jr. Through his endorsement to Donald Trump, number one. And he managed to pull that off. They got the evangelical vote, and we know what happened there. He was also, in my estimation, involved in an intimidation plan against Giancarlo. Giancarlo has been harassed, he's been stalked, he's been followed, he's been threatened at gunpoint. He was threatened by Jerry Jr. holding a gun when they were out skeet shooting on his farm in Virginia, not far from Liberty University. Michael Cohen got with the IT director at Liberty University, a guy named John Gauger, who also had a company, a reputation enhancement firm called Red Finch Solutions. And, among all the other deeds committed by Michael Cohen, one was he fixed a poll. I'm not quite sure. I think it was a CNBC poll, but they managed to rig that from Liberty University. So to say he had many fingers in the pot would be an understatement.
And you mentioned earlier that Jerry Sr., he rallied behind Ronald Reagan. And as we all know, in 2016, Jerry Jr., he threw his support behind Donald Trump. Do you think without Falwell's endorsement, Trump would have won the presidency?
It's hard to say, but the damage done with these young evangelicals is the most striking thing to me. I managed to visit Liberty University while I was camping out waiting for an interview with Jerry and Becki that never happened. And let's see, what am I saying here? The Liberty University by that point had already established the Falkirk Center. That's kind of a mashup between Falwell and Charlie Kirk, who we know as a, in my opinion, a very annoying hard right pundit on Twitter and that sort of thing. Now, Charlie Kirk, a community college dropout himself, all of a sudden had a think tank at Liberty University with his name on it. And, what does that say? Well, it says to me that that's essentially a radicalization center, for young Republicans, veering to the hard right. And you can trace the Falkirk plan all the way to the steps of the Capitol on January 6th out of Liberty University with the assistance of one Ginny Thomas, and sending 80 buses to the Capitol on January 6th.
You know, the irony here, as I was reading this book, there's sex, alcohol, intimidation, and all of that is on the backdrop of Liberty University, which is deeply Christian. It has a conservative tilt, and it has an honor code there called the Liberty Way. Can you expand on that?
Sure, the Liberty Way. No drinking, no hand holding, no close dancing, uh, no being in the same room with the opposite sex. You know, it's sort of the do as I say, not as I do type thing that was going on. Meantime, Becki Falwell is sneaking into her son's, as reported in Politico, uh, sneaking into her son's friend and bandmate's room, and while he was sleeping, delivering oral sex to this kid. The kid wound up being like, "Oh my God, I feel like Monica Lewinsky here." Well, she was trying to groom me. She came in, she went down on me, and now she won't leave me alone. You know, we saw that pattern of behavior long before Giancarlo entered the picture with the insatiable Becki Falwell and a husband who was willing to do anything and sacrifice everything to make sure that his wife and himself, from a position as Giancarlo would say, the cuck in the corner, you know, getting his jollies out of the whole affair.
And in the book, Giancarlo describes Becki as a sociopath. What do you make of that characterization?
Well, I think it's a perfectly apt characterization, especially since, you know, since this came out, this is the most incredible media story I have ever witnessed. They went somehow they coaxed a rather sympathetic interview for Vanity Fair. My colleague Gabriel Sherman did that, and in that interview, Becki straight up accused Giancarlo Granda of sexually assaulting her the last time they had sex on the family farm, at which where his own family, Giancarlo's family, was present that evening. Uh, did not happen. We brought receipts. We prove it in the book, and it's proven in Billy Corbin's documentary. God forbid. What uh, she claimed that, and then within weeks of that, Megan Stack of the New Yorker was interviewing Jerry, and she said, "What about these claims by your wife?" And he literally said on the record, tape rolling, he said, "Oh, we just made that up to get the book killed." So it should become obvious that Off the Deep End is the book that the Falwells do not want you to read under any circumstances. So in other words, that's the most egregious thing is that Becki Falwell propped herself up behind the Me Too movement. And, you know, "Oh, he assaulted me." No, he didn't. We have video proof that he did. Okay. And yet at the same time, her husband is willing to throw her under the bus, saying that she had an affair that he barely knew about. He was there filming it almost at least 50% of the time they were engaging in sexual activity. So to say she's a sociopath is not an understatement. Who does that? Who cries rape when a rape never even happened and we can prove it? And her own husband is going to say, "Yeah, we made that up to get the book killed." That's sociopathic behavior.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I read both of those pieces, and I was shocked at the brazenness of them point blank admitting that, yes, we did make that up. So, are they so scared of this book to make up a sexual assault because of all of the receipts Giancarlo has?
Yeah, they tried everything. My first conversation, to bring it back to where we started. My first conversation was with Jerry Falwell Jr. Was he said he opened it with, and this was my initial query because I was ready to sit down with everybody named in the book and present, what I had to them and seek out responses.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can imagine, most of these people ran for the hills, cowards that they are. But Jerry opened with an interesting threat. He said that, and I have it on tape, I'm happy to share it with you. He said that Giancarlo Granda is going to be sitting in a federal prison. And you, Mark Ebner, can be considered abetting him. I don't take to those threats lightly. I responded, I'm on my way to I'm on my way to Lynchburg, Virginia, and maybe perhaps we can hash this out. It never happened, but I sure got a stomach full of what was going on at Liberty University.
Yeah, that is bold to threaten a journalist on tape. You both are being recorded. So how did Giancarlo have the wherewithal during the time to say, hey, I need to keep these receipts. I need to video record this FaceTime. I need to keep these text messages, things like that?
Well, the text messages just didn't disappear, so we had those. But the push coming to shove point was when they the scandal was out, and they were still trying to work him, and they being Becki and Jerry, initiated a FaceTime video. And fortunately, Giancarlo had the good sense to hit record. And in this video, which you'll see in the documentary, God forbid, and be able to read about it in detail in the book, was Becki doing a striptease in their home room, giving Giancarlo a tour of every place they had had sex in the Falwell estate, including her own minor daughter's bedroom. And while this was going on, you can clearly see, once again, Jerry Falwell Jr. in a corner videotaping the whole thing. And frankly, it's disgusting. I could only watch it once for evidentiary purposes.
And I know that you said you have talked, or you did talk to Jerry Falwell Jr. on the phone, but have they responded since the book came out?
Nothing else to call the book lies and half-truths. Not being able to point out one lie or even a half-truth. And they're hiding behind, quote-unquote, pending litigation. They're taking the coward's way out because there's no litigation as far as I can tell.
And what was the most surprising thing that you found out about the Falwell dynasty?
Interesting question. Nothing surprises me with radicalized evangelicals. I suppose that this stumble-bum, drunken university president was able to wield that much power, I suppose. His cover should have been pulled a long time ago, and I'm only grateful that we're able to, kind of put an end bullet on it right here. I'm waiting for the Falwells to try and respond, other than to harass Giancarlo himself, which they were doing well into 2019, accusing him of taking money from the Lincoln Project, just trying to make him look like some hustler that he is not. Giancarlo Granda, through all of this, managed to get a master's degree in real estate development and finance from Georgetown University. He's a smart kid. He deserves to have his name back, and he deserves to have a chance at a life that they almost destroyed.
And he talks a lot about that in the book. He takes issue with being described as a pool boy. You know, that's his job when he was 20. Like you said, he
Hmm.
has a master's. That was a decade ago. He's moved past that. And Tom
Yeah,
Arnold, the comedian, he described him as the hero of this story. Would you also describe Giancarlo that way as well?
100%. 100% Giancarlo is the hero of this story. Because he swallowed a lot of truths about himself. He admitted to a lot of mistakes. It's all in the book. And he did something else. He shows remorse, something that the Falwells and their ilk can never seem to do. It's sort of like when Becki Falwell, admitted to her philandering. She said, "Well, it's important that my husband has forgiven me." And that's what Jesus says to do. Well, I don't know about that. There a remorse stage or an apology stage in there? Somehow they skipped over that one for sure. And it's no accident that, since then, under Jerry Falwell's uh, chancellorship and presidency at Liberty University, there have been 22 Jane Does claiming that they were sexually assaulted on campus at Liberty University. So the book starts with sex and it ends with sex crimes, which haven't been prosecuted yet, but I'm waiting.
Yeah, and that kind of fell under the cloak of this Liberty Way because you couldn't admit to an assault without saying that, oh, I broke the conduct code of some sort. So has campus culture shifted since Jerry Falwell Jr. was ousted from Liberty University?
I would certainly hope so, but that really calls for a top down cleaning of house. We've still got there is still a guy. I think he's been demoted from being a dean, uh, who is still employed at Liberty University. He was a dean. Now they gave him another title and cut his salary. Who is, tongue in cheek being referred to as the Bill Cosby of Liberty University. This is a guy who has twice been accused of drugging and sexually assaulting students on campus. And there's a podcast I direct your viewers to, called Gangster Capitalism. And Gangster Capitalism, those people who covered this extensively are wondering, how does that dean still have a job? So no, there's a lot of house cleaning to be done at Liberty University, and I'm watching. Because if there was a third act to this book, it would be about Liberty University and uh, this insidious culture that was generated by the Falwells themselves.
So did they start this? Did they perpetuate this culture and start it, or was it there pre Becky and Jerry Jr.?
Well, I would say that a little bit of both. But I mean, what can I point to if I was to grasp something right out of the air on the center stage at the convocation at Liberty University? You have Jerry Falwell Jr. pointing out his extremely hot wife in a Liberty Flames miniskirt. I mean, this is, that just goes to, it's just a peek into what a debaucherous couple they were. And I think the students were kind of hip to it, watching Jerry stumble around campus, trying to have parties with students at his house, posing for pictures with his pants undone next to a pregnant woman. I mean, it goes on and on and on with this guy. And yes, to say he started it, I'm not so quite so sure. It could have been started with uh, with the some of the ironic values at Liberty University, but he certainly brought the empire down as a result of their actions.
Yeah,
Jerry and Becki, that is.
I mean, what you're describing now, what was described in the book, was super insidious. But also described in the book was the Falwell's immense wealth. So I do want to discuss the financial implications of the fallout from this scandal. Did this impact them at all financially?
Well, I think it did. They're being sued by Liberty University right now for $40 million. Meanwhile, I think that he exited, and this is just, from what I read, I think he exited when they demanded he step down. He exited with, I think, a $10 million package, and perhaps he's countersuing him for amount that may well reach $150 million. How this is going to wash out, it's anybody's guess. But at the end of the day, we can see clearly who's on the wrong side here of history and otherwise.
And what made you want to tell Giancarlo's side of the story here?
Uh, Well, it was just my first conversation with Giancarlo made me want to tell his story. Billy Corbin put me in touch with him, Billy being the director of God Forbid. And when I got him on the phone, I realized that I was talking to an intelligent uh, young man who had me convinced from Jump Street that Jerry and Becki had I'll censor myself here, had effed with the wrong pool boy. And I liked that dynamic. So I just dove right in off the deep end, as it were.
And he had the receipt and he had the receipts to prove it. And
He did.
you've written many stories on celebrities, sex, scandals, things of that nature. So how is this different than anything else you've covered?
I think it's different because, a lot of the criminals that I've written about through the years are simply pigs. These people were literally guiding the conversation from the right. And, to me, it is the astounding hypocrisy of all of that, which blows my mind. So, money, power, religion, sex, it's a dangerous combination, and yet somehow I was there to help document it all with Giancarlo.
Yeah, and your book has it all. It's definitely a page turner. Where can people find Off the Deep End?
Oh, heck, anywhere, Amazon.com, especially your local bookstores. And then I would imagine Walmart, Target, Costco, every outlet you can get this book. And I hope people do read it because I feel like it's also one of the more important books that I've worked on in my career. And this is like the 10th book I've done.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a very important read. Mark Ebner, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brittany.